Michael Calpino, and I'm running as an independent for the 1st District seat in Maryland. We're here because we love our country, and we have a real and justifiable concern that we are losing all the things that make it unique and have made it a blessing to the world. I've been politically involved since 9/11, and in 2009, like probably most of us here, when the Tea Party rose up, I became actively involved in that, first with Americans for Prosperity and currently with the Maryland Society of Patriots. Why run for Congress at this point in time? Why try and join a club that has an approval rating that generally wallows in the single digits? I've got a lot of personal pet peeves with my government. I don't like them taking my money to support other people's immorality and irresponsibility. I don't like them taking my money and building a regulatory cage around me. I don't like them taking my money and using it to propagandize that all the things that made America great are evil, and that because I believe in limited government and personal responsibility and liberty that I'm stupid, ignorant, bigoted, and wrong. I'm tired of hearing those things. Those are personal pet peeves. I've also got 3 children that are nearing adulthood, and I fear for their future. You know, are they going to be free when they can't afford to drive to work or school because our government has made war on energy? Are they going to be free because when we have placed a crushing burden of debt and made them slaves to the Chinese and the Saudis? Are they going to be free when they have to live in fear of global jihad coming to their doorstep, or even a government bureaucrat, probably even worse? I've identified 3 areas that I think need immediate attention, and I've written about them at length in Leave Me Alone, the Patriots' plan to restore pride and prosperity in America. The 3 areas are our fiscal health, our economics, our cultural decline, and things from outside of our borders. And there are solutions to all these problems, but they're bold and they're very politically incorrect, and they require us to take personal responsibility for our lives and individual liberty. Well, everybody talks about spending, and we know we're spending too much money, borrowing 40 cents out of every dollar, and that is completely unsustainable. The fact that we have a government that requires $3.7 trillion currently to run is crazy, because there's way too. Government is trying to do way too many things that it's not supposed to do. Government exists to protect individuals' liberty, and anything that does beyond that is just redistribution of wealth. It's basically stealing money from one person and giving it to another. Because we cannot afford that through taxes, we have to borrow. The Fed has to print. The elimination of the Fed is one of the most important things we can do to put ourselves back in fiscal order and return to sound money. I have a plan for doing that, taking off of much of what Murray Rothbard has talked about in his plan of eliminating the Fed and basically dissolving it as you would any corporation and bring us back to sound money. If we do that, then we are now constrained by taxation and legitimate borrowing, what people will be willing to lend us, which is where Europe finds themselves. People aren't willing to lend them any money because they've spent too much. If we have those constraints and start borrowing responsibly, which we should only do in case of emergencies, and we're only spending on things like defense, like the court systems, like things that are constitutionally not only viable but legal, we're going to have a government that we can afford. I don't think Dodd-Frank, I think, made the problem worse at this point in time because of things that it requires of the banks and the greater intrusion. If we look back on what happened there, the problem actually went all the way back to Clinton and their desire to put everyone into a house. Again, we have a government trying to regulate human behavior. So a bunch of bureaucrats and politicians got together and said everybody should own a house. How are we going to accomplish that? We're going to force banks to lend to people who have no business buying a house in a business climate that they wouldn't qualify for a loan. Well, the government's going to step in and say, hey, we're going to make you loan that money, and then we're going to guarantee the loan, so the taxpayers are on the hook for it. This developed and developed all the way through Clinton and Bush and all the way to the end of the Bush administration at this point in time, because it was 2008. And property values went through the roof because you brought a whole bunch of new buyers into the market who didn't qualify before, who now qualify. Property values went crazy. Everybody thought, oh, this is the way to make money. You get more people into the market. And sooner or later, everybody sees the emperor has no clothes. You've got a whole bunch of loans that nobody can pay back. People begin to default. and the whole thing comes apart. Why? Because government decided to take away from the marketplace its common sense and substitute their own common sense. Get the government out of the housing market, let banks do what banks do, which is to manage risk according to their own guidelines, and you don't have this kind of problem anymore. It's between the Fed and the government is what creates these wild swings in the business cycle, because they're constantly meddling, and they're creating bubbles because they're compensating certain people and punishing others. So you create good things over here and bad things over here, but the good things are created on real, and the bad things, they just compound when those good things fall apart. We have to recognize a lot of what this problem is for what it is, and that is, at least across our southern border, it's an invasion. And many of the folks coming across that border look at it that way. Our border is completely out of control, and this is one of the, with the violence on the border. I mean, there are places where people that live on the United States side of the border can't even reside in their homes anymore for fear of their lives. And this is one area that a government, the federal government, has a role and responsibility, the primary role and responsibility. This is their job. Sovereignty doesn't mean anything if you cannot control your borders, who's in and who's not. And this problem all began back in the 60s when they eliminated the program that we had for a long time, which was a quota system from countries that are going to easily assimilate into our culture on a scale that would make sure that the culture and the language were maintained. That's a system we need to go back to. What to do with the folks that are here? First of all, you got to take away all the goodies. If folks are coming here illegally, they're getting free medical care, they're getting on welfare rolls, they're getting, like in Maryland, they get driver's license, etc. That's all got to stop. You got to stop making it easy for them. And the thing that everybody said, they're doing jobs Americans won't do. I don't believe that at all. If you've ever watched Dirty Jobs on television, you know there are jobs that you can't even imagine doing that Americans do. And second, we've got millions of people, able-bodied people, that are sitting around on welfare rolls that if they didn't have that check coming from the government, they'd do those jobs. Entry-level jobs. High schoolers that can't find jobs because immigrants, illegal immigrants, are doing those jobs. You know, there's a place for legal immigration, and the system as it exists needs to be fixed, but we need to get control of that southern border. I agree with Mr. Friedman. I don't think any government should establish a wage or even the stipulations of any contract between two individuals, time for work and what they get paid and what they agree to do for in a mutual beneficial manner. So I'd abolish the federal minimum wage and state minimum wages as well. Let the free market determine the value of everyone's labor. That's all I've got to say on that. We can look at poverty programs and we can see that they're a failure, that they've destroyed families, that they create dependency, and all that is true. But we got to get to the fundamental issue, because Thomas Jefferson talked about this very issue at our founding time, and he said you can't take money from people that are productive and give it to people that are not. It's an immoral thing to do. It's bad for the person that you're stealing the money from, and it's bad for the person that's receiving the money. Spending like that, it's what has resulted in our cultural decline, which is one of the things that I talk about in the book. Talk about Social Security for a second. I don't know if that's a future question or not, but what does Social Security do? Social Security destroys a family by taking the responsibility for aging parents away from children, where it has always been for millennia. So now you've got parents that don't have to worry so much about making sure they raise good children and children that love them. They don't have to be taken care of by their children. Their government's going to take their children's money and force them to take care of them when they're older. And you've got children that don't worry about their parents when they're older, so you've got that tearing apart that family connection. Same thing with welfare spending with children and their parents. If you're destroying the work ethic, if you're paying for people to have children, you're encouraging immorality amongst the culture. All these things are related to this idea that you've got a society that's based on theft. If you've got a society that's based on immorality, it's just going to breed immorality. And entitlement That's a word that should never exist in our republic, our constitutional republic, because no one is entitled to anything from anybody else. We have more energy. We are greater than Saudi Arabia in energy and potential energy and energy stores that we have, and we should allow the free market to bring those to the forefront. The federal government should not own 98% of Nevada and other places where we can tap into these resources. That land should become private, allow private individuals and companies to go after that wherever possible. I agree with all the elimination of the EPA and the Interior Department and all those obstacles that are there. But in relation to what's going on in the Middle East, part of the problem is, you see, Islam is always aggressive when it sees an opportunity to be aggressive. And with the oil discovered in the Middle East, you got to remember, before 1930, 1920, sure, Thomas Jefferson had a problem with Islam back then when they were powerful in North Africa. But once they get beaten down, they moderate, they relax, they don't have, and there's not a lot of conflict there. When the power increases, then they become aggressive. Well, with all the petrodollars that we send to the Middle East, it allows them to become aggressive. They're exporting the Wahhabi sect of Islam from Saudi Arabia all over the world, including in our country. They're sending imams into the mosques to radicalize people here, both Muslims, and they're going into prison populations and converting them there, all done with Saudi Arabia money. And if we could bring the price of oil down by using our own resources and take that money away, their major resource will be gone, and they will not be able to export as much of the radicalism as possible, and perhaps some moderate form of Islam, as some people practice in the United States, could actually become a viable alternative. But as long as they've got the money, and as long as they've got that backing, they've got the momentum, and all the moderates are on their heels. And as long as we have this energy policy, it's going to stay that way. These questions are going to sound very familiar. No, the government has no role in education whatsoever, nor should it. As somebody that's homeschooled my children, I think education is a family responsibility and a community responsibility at most. If a bunch of people within a community want to get together and they want to communally educate their children and voluntarily do that, or private schools, whatever, fine. But government control of education, what is the purpose of government control of education? It is to make sure that young people grow up and think of government positively. One of the 10 things in the Communist Manifesto, free public education for all children. Why? Because you're taking those minds and you're putting them in a particular box that says, government's good, government's going to solve my problems, government's always going to be there for me, government is the authority that I'm supposed to always look up to. Education should be completely taken out of both federal and state governments, brought back to communities. Mandatory attendance in education, in public education, should be abolished. We've got classrooms full of kids who have no interest in being there, that could be doing all those jobs that we now have illegal immigrants doing as entry-level jobs for people that aren't interested in education. So government should be out of education completely. All the taxes that you mentioned, the income tax, the death tax, capital gains tax, those are all taxes on productive activity, which I think are immoral. When you put your mind or your hands to produce something, you should not have that taken from you, especially even before you receive it, like we do now, by your government. If we had a government that fit into the Constitution, I bet you we could, between national defense and the court system and just the things necessary that are within the Constitution, you're well under $1 trillion. You wouldn't need a consumption tax. You certainly don't need income taxes. You could probably go back to what we used to have many moons ago, which was just a tariff. And that was it. That paid for everything. And those were the arguments that were had in Congress. It was over one tax. What's the tariff going to be? Who's it going to apply to? And you can fight over that, but you're not taking the money from Americans and their hard-earned efforts and taking it while they're living, when they're dead, and when they actually make a profit. There is no reason to take that kind of money. It's an immoral system, because all it is redistribution, which is stealing from one person and giving to another. So I'd eliminate all those things, bring government down to size, fund it with tariffs, and leave it at that. Well, let's look at it this way. Let's go 2 years down the road. We put Mr. Harris back in office. 2 years down the road, is anything going to be different? Are we not going to be several trillion dollars more in debt? Is any government program or any unconstitutional agency going to be eliminated? No, it's not going to happen. Are we going to continue to spend at current levels? Yes, we will. Probably spend even more. Are we going to continue to borrow 40 cents out of every dollar? Yes, we will, as long as our money is actually worth anything. None of that is going to change. Muir and I both face the opposition of the major parties who have controlled this country hand in hand for all this time. And, we're running from the outside. Think of what would happen, however, if the people of the Eastern Shore chose to be represented by people who, A, took their oath to defend the Constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic seriously, and B, put the liberty of the people that they are there to serve as their highest priority. And either one of us actually won that election, as an independent, as a libertarian, whatever. And that would make a statement. I mean, the Eastern Shore could make that statement to the entire rest of the country, that the two parties don't have total control anymore. And for all those other third-party candidates and independents out there, that everybody says, you vote for them, you're just throwing away your vote. Not so much anymore, because now you've broken that power. You've put the first crack in the dam. You know what? As an independent, we're not going to be able to do much up there as far as legislation and all that kind of stuff. We're up there to be a witness for liberty, in a sense, and to be a conscience. And if we could make that first step, we could open the door for everybody else to make changes down the road. 2 years from now, if you put Mr. Harris back in, nothing's going to change. Put one of us in, we could make a statement that is going to shake the whole country up.